Welcome to Dairy Robot Radio, the show that provides answers to your most pressing questions about dairy farming and automation. Each episode will focus on a major topic within the dairy industry and will feature experts throughout our industry and within Laylee to help provide information and different perspectives on automation. And now, here's your host, Bellana Putz.
Hey everybody, I'm Bellana Putz with Dairy Robot Radio. And today we're talking with Paul Peetz, Laylee North America's Milking Technologies Manager. And we're going to be discussing milking technique, how it works with robots, some of the other ways Laylee's staff support the process, how we make dairy operators' lives more efficient, easy, and profitable. Paul, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us more about your background in milking technique?
So my background in milking technique, grew up on a small dairy farm in Wisconsin, been around dairy farming all my life, but went off to college, got a degree in an ag engineering background, and then started, got out of college, needed a job. So I went to work for an equipment company working with milking equipment, and pretty much have been there ever since.
Have you milked a few cows in your life?
I have milked a few cows in my life. Not afraid to admit it.
And how many generations has dairy farming been running through your blood?
At least 3. That's all I can remember. I wasn't told much further back than that.
Okay. So you've been around cows a long time. What does it mean when we talk about milking technique in regards to milking robots?
I think what it really means is how can we perfect the process of making the machine and the biological unit, which is the cow, interface. So we've really been able to take the data that the robot generates and kind of build a feedback loop, so to speak, to understand what the cow needs, what the cow wants, and then provide that for the cow with the robot and the technology that is the robot.
So what are some of the factors that influence the cow?
The cow really wants a consistent environment. The biggest thing, if we look at cows, what they really want is the same thing every day. And one of the things that the robot is really good at doing is consistent, the same thing every day, morning, night, noon, Sunday, whenever. It delivers the same process to the cow.
So when we talk robot barns, Laylee really hangs their hat on cow comfort. Why is that important?
It's key. The cow needs to be comfortable to perform up to her maximum potential. So one of the things we like to talk about is inside the robot, we can provide that comfort and still provide some speed by matching what the cow wants out of the milking process. With that data, we can really meet her needs and help provide comfort along the way.
Okay, so we get a cow into the robot, and we want to thoroughly get the milk out of her. What can you tell us more about thorough milking?
So the robot really does deliver a lot of things, and one of the things it delivers very well is complete milking by quarter. One of the things the Laylee robot does, is look specifically at flow by quarter and can determine when that particular quarter has been emptied, and we can take that teacup off while still milking the other 2 or 3 that still have milk in them to make sure each quarter is milked completely but yet not uncomfortably.
So are there specific benefits to the dairy producer and the cow that should be considered when looking at milking techniques?
Well, I think so. I think specifically what we can do is use the data to make determinations because we don't have any of the irregularity that humans could impart. So the robot, with its consistency, allows us to see more pure data to understand what the cow wants, needs, and we can deliver back to her through the milking process.
What are the cow's needs on a day-to-day basis? How do we make milking with robots easier?
So we let the cow tell us. One of the things the robot really does well, like I said, is to kind of meet the needs of the cow and provide consistency, but we let the cow tell us what she wants. We let the cow tell us how often she'd like to come to the robot, how much she'd like to be in the robot, and we can kind of meet her needs on her own scale or her own levels.
So there's a lot of benefits to milking with robots. Is it all for the cows or is it for the human too?
Well, I don't think anybody enjoyed getting up at 4 o'clock every day for their lifetime. So one of the things that the robot does is it's stationed there in the barn near the cow, so the cow doesn't have to go far, and the robot's there whenever she wants to visit it, and does the milking process efficiently, cleanly, comfortably at any time. So we can go do other things, take care of tasks that maybe, hey, one of the things that was always a problem that I remember was at 5 o'clock, The hay's just about perfect. We should be chopping, but we got to stop and go back and milk cows. The robot keeps milking and we can keep chopping.
When we talk about how far should a cow, how much access or distance or whatnot should there be for a cow to the robot? You know, you shared a story with me about how a cow watched others and the boss cow, and why should I get up when I can hang out here? So help our listeners understand that process.
So the nice part about box robots, one of the things that we really believe in with Laylee, is that the box robot can be placed close to the cow. We can pump the milk a distance, and we can pump the milk where the bulk tank is, but when we locate the box robot near the cows, she can be near the feed, she can be near the water, she can be near the robot, and that way she doesn't expend wasted calories or extra effort just trying to get from one place to the other. We can meet her where she wants to be.
How does this entire milking technique help increase production?
So a couple of things, but one of the things I think is the most key is, especially when we look at those early animals into the robot facility, so especially the 2-year-olds or even second lactation animals. In today's dairy economy, we tend to try to get those cows in a productive state quickly, and sometimes we've got cows that are still seeing some growth as far as frame and size, even in their second lactation. But in that first lactation, the udder capacity is somewhat limited. So the more frequent that we can milk that cow, the more ability she has to make more milk. So the frequency of milk extraction in those fresh 2-year-olds is very important. And the robot can address making sure that we're not causing teat end damage or over milking cows by quarter, and we can milk them more frequently, up to 6 times a day, without any kind of repercussions down the line.
What are some of the key differences of box-style robots versus other types of automated dairying?
So one of the things I think we see in the box-style robot, as opposed to some of the other automated or robotic-style milking approaches, is that the robot, for one, being close to the cow, allows that freedom of the cow. And one of the things we want the cow to be able to do is express her needs on a daily basis. By being close to the cow, open access and free access to the robot is another way that the cow can really meet her potentials. And then no worries of getting trapped or cornered or pushed into a spot by a boss cow. We have free open areas in front of the robot and out of the robot, so that those timid cows, 2-year-olds, have kind of free access to go do what they need to do and slip back into a stall or a feed alley to do what they want to do later.
So for a dairy farmer that's been milking with robots for a while now, and they're really wanting to fine-tune things within their process, and they're standing there looking at the milking of the cows, how do they fine-tune milking technique?
So I think there's a couple things that the dairyman himself can do, and there's a lot of data. We can support any of their decisions with a tremendous amount of data. But one of the things that we like to do is, if you're in the robot room and just watching the cow's interaction, how freely can the cow come? How freely can the cow leave the robot? And while she's in the robot, how freely does she milk or accept the milking process? Is she standing with all 4 feet on the ground? Is she comfortable? Does she seem to be moving around? Those are a lot of things that we can dial into and make sure that we're meeting the cow's needs as far as a comfortable, thorough, complete milk out.
So T4C is our time for cows, and the dashboard that producers have when they sit down at the office and look at the data. What are some of the numbers that our producers should be looking at when considering effectiveness?
So one of the things I think that's a key kind of number that I look at on dashboards when I go to T4C dashboards is really a couple of things: the failures and the attachment attempts. I want to make sure that every milking ends correctly, starts, finishes, and ends correctly. And then that attachment attempt, I really think it's important that we give the cow consistency. So that means when we make a move to put a cup on a cow, we get a placement of a cup on a cow. And I think we can do that quite well. And if we get outside the box a bit, we can make some adjustments and get back to where we need to be.
So you've been on a lot of farms, a lot of Laylee robot farms. What are some of the fixes that farmers maybe have skipped or needed to do in order to get their optimum milking experience with their cows?
There's always busy things on a farm. All of us have more things to do in a day than we think we can get done, or should probably even try to get done. But some of the daily maintenance things to make sure that we have good visual sight of the teat, so we get good accurate readings of where the teat is, so we can place the teat cup. And that comes down to just daily maintenance of cleaning lasers and making sure that we don't have anything in the way as far as on the udder of the cow. We get good picture, good sight lines of the teats.
Is there anything guys should be repetitively doing on the cows to make them more optimally milked?
We really think it's a nice practice to make sure we've got udders singed for a couple of reasons. Extra hair can hold extra debris and therefore cause more bacteria to be closer to the teat. And it also kind of has issues with sight lines for the laser and other options to see the teat. So frequent singeing really gives a better picture of the teat.
So docking of tails is more or less a thing of the past as a result of cow welfare. Thoughts and opinions on that obviously vary, and we don't have to pick on that topic today. But is there anything with the tail itself robot farmers should be doing?
We like to keep the tail switch as close as short as possible so that we don't get interference with the brush when we clean on the cow. So yeah, just managing the length and managing that tail so it doesn't get too out of hand, but it's not like we've got to do the old days of docking cows. We can still let tail to be there.
What should producers be evaluating periodically to ensure the cow is being milked comfortably?
So I think that goes back to the cow standing. If the cow is standing well and the cow's visiting the robot, we can look at the dashboard and say, how many visits did that cow or that group of cows have today? Did we refuse some, and how many were milked? So we really know the cows are making traffic to the robot, they're freely coming to the robot, and we can really understand how well the cow feels about coming to the robot by her visit activity.
So Laylee's care division is comprised of aftermarket team members, technical service support folks, and then farm management support people. We have a 24/7 promise to our new robot farmers running the A5, the A4, whatever number it is. In your experience, Paul, how do these teams work together to help dairy producers?
Well, I think the nice part about the idea of having the FMS and TSS team behind or around the robot is that the new producer, the guy or gal who's never had a robot before, has gone into a situation where there may be some uncomfortable, there may be some questions that these people with FMS and TSS have been through. Now I think we're up to 30,000+ robots around the globe. We've got that ability to help you be an expert by a phone call or a text message or a team viewer visit on your computer. So it really allows you access to that expert level support quickly, easily, and at your time schedule.
So how do these people stand out?
How do the FMS, TSS, and that group stand out? I think they stand out because of their history and their knowledge of working through the robot process, not only here, but on cows all over the globe. So we can understand if you have different needs or your cows have different needs, how we've addressed, solved, and provided solutions to those problems all over the world in different settings, different times, and different locales to really make sure the robot is meeting the needs of both the farmer and the cow.
So for people out there still considering switching to robotics, and they've heard about Laylee, but they don't know who Laylee is. And, I think of when I buy a new car, my experience with that dealership may be see you down the road when you need new tires. The Laylee experience is far different than that. Can you tell people who have not worked with Laylee or haven't asked their neighbor who may have Laylee robots, what is the service promise? What's the relationship? What is the customer experience for new robot owners with this brand?
Well, I think one of the things Laylee has done is made their living on robots. We don't have other things to hang our hat on, so we've got to be successful with robots. We're forced to make them do what we promised they would do. So over the years, we've been able to do that. And one of the things that I think really provides value is that expertise, that knowledge, that support. And truthfully, we want to sell more robots. We're in this industry, we're in this process for a long time. So we need to make sure that your needs are met so that you tell your neighbors and you tell your friends they should have one too. So we need to fulfill that commitment, and we have. We continue to, and we continue to provide that service long after you've bought the robot. It's not like you bought one and we take care of you. As long as there's a robot in the market, we make sure it's working properly.
So what's a week look like between a Laylee center and a customer?
There's as much interaction, and as we start these processes, I would say that interaction from the first day or the day that the robot is sold can vary quite a bit, but the process becomes, let's get that new owner, that new robot dairy person, up to speed and understanding what the robot can do for the cows and for the environment. So we teach, train, and educate constantly to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the customer and the cows. And that changes over time. 1 year in and 5 years in, there's a different outlook, and we can meet those needs because we've been through it before.
What are some of the insights that Laylee Center staff provide to farmers in regards to milking technique and achieving maximum production?
So one of the things that I think works quite well is to set personal goals or set goals for the dairy. And with the data that we monitor on T4C and through other tools, we can see if we're meeting those goals. So if your goal is to milk more cows or make more milk per box or make more milk per cow, all those things are things that we can monitor, manage, and then provide the data to improve and make sure that we're heading in the right direction.
Our arm goes underneath the cow. Other brands approach the udder differently. What's the difference?
So I think one of the advantages of having everything, it's kind of like the toolbox. When I go to work on a truck or go to work on a tractor, it's really nice to have the toolbox right next to you. And one of the things that we can do with the Laylee arm and mothership is that we've taken all the tools under the cow. It's in a spot where the cow doesn't have an interference point, so we're under the belly of the cow and out of the way of the legs, but we've got all the tools we need to get accurate sensing of milk flow, accurate detection of any abnormalities in the milk, and it's right there next to the udder, so we get quick, accurate response by having the toolbox next to where the work needs to be done.
So, Paul, we've talked about milking technique in terms of how the robot does what it does. We've talked about cows and how they comfortably need to get to the robot and what their day-to-day routine is. But at the end of the day, why does a cow do what she does so well in a robot?
So I like to think she does it as well as can be done in a Laylee robot. But one of the things that the cow, as we spoke about earlier, the cow's looking for consistency. But what we can do with the Laylee robot, and truly because we've been doing it long enough to understand, is that the cow has basic minimal needs. She needs to be stimulated to some extent. She needs some time for that stimulation to take effect in the oxytocin letdown. And then we need to milk that cow as completely as possible without causing any kind of irritation to the tissue and provide that gentle, calm milking environment. So we know we need the stimulation time. We can control that with a robot. We know we need the lag time. We can control that precisely with the robot. And we know that milking time and that milking comfort needs to be delivered to the teat. We can control that precisely with the robot, not only with vacuum settings and pulsation settings, but with very aggressive and very accurate detached settings by quarter. So it gives us a unique advantage to meet the needs of the cow, not only as a whole entity, but by the quarter as that cow wants to and proceeds to be milked. So I think one of the things the robot and the Laylee robot probably does it as well, I believe, as anybody's. It meets those needs of the cow so that she can go out and do what she does all day long with no problems caused by the milking event.
So is an average cow an acceptable cow in a Laylee robot?
One of the new things that I really like to talk about is that there are no average cows. When we look at cows, all quarters do milk differently. Different flow rates, different amount of time taken. So there is no average cow. And with Laylee, we really don't see why we would ever accept an average milking. So to meet the needs of that non-average cow, we have the ability to adapt by quarter to make sure that that's not an average milking on quarter, but the exactly correct milking for that quarter on that cow on that day.
What does the data in a robot tell a person about the average cow? How do they find the average cow?
So the data at this point in the robot is somewhat overwhelming, and that's why the T4C and some of the software packages that we've developed allow us to take some of those data sets and refine them into decision-making opportunities. So the data is every little point of the milking process telling us what that cow needs at that time. We can adapt to it. We can deliver that. The data helps us make good decisions, not assumptions.
The milking industry is always going to be up and down, Paul, right? History tells us that milk price is going to go down, milk price is going to go up, government's going to do one thing, weather's going to impact. We have all of these relentless opportunities and threats to the dairy producer. As we see today, in particular states, Wisconsin, your home state, we've seen a significant drop in dairy farmers, unfortunately, but we're not seeing a significant drop in cow numbers. So that means, and we know today, those cows are getting absorbed into other larger dairies. Some of those dairies are milking with robots today. More than less are not milking with robots today. In 5 years, where do you see this trend going?
I don't think there's any question that if we look 5 years from now, there'll be more cows milked with a robot than there are today. And the reasons are the efficiencies. If we look at dairies today, one of the things we always talk about is, as you said earlier, we can't control the price of milk, but we can control what we spend to make it. There's a dairyman told me a long time ago, if you want more milk, you can buy it in the grocery store too. And if you spend too much to make it, it's not worth making. So the efficiencies that we're looking for inside the robot really come into the fact of, I'm going to put grain in front of the cow, I'm going to put feed in front of the cow, I'm going to put those expenses, those inputs into the cow. How can I maximize what I spend to feed, house, and care for the cow in returns and milk sold? So that really comes down to, how can I meet that quarter milk potential, maximize it, make sure every cow in that barn that I'm feeding and caring for is returning the most milk she could return. And that's where I get kind of excited. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to make that milk at a price that actually does pay for doing things with robots and farming, and we can continue the process of milking cows in Wisconsin and other states.
Thanks, Paul, for joining us today and going over some of the key differences with milking of cows. I mean, we've been doing it for thousands of years, and we're just going to continue to get better doing it. So you can hear this episode on Dairy Robot Radio, and if you have any questions, please always contact your local Laylee Center for that local expertise in your backyard.
You've been listening to Dairy Robot Radio, the show for dairy producers who want their questions answered by experts in dairy automation. Connect with us at dairyrobotradio.com to listen to all episodes and learn more about the topics and guests on the show. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify.